Good evening, ghouls and fiends. Welcome once again to another edition of the Ministry of Horror. I'm your host, Tezz, and we're back with the latest slices of horror news and some reviews, and sometimes we have little talking points. We haven't had one for a little while. I am very aware that we haven't had a featured presentation in a little while. I need to rectify that. I certainly do, and be a little bit more prepared. It's been very busy. We did a show the other week, the first one in a little while due to various gaps, and we're now in the festive season, so very busy with that. Very busy with planning the wedding. Busy. But I digress. We are back. We are gonna just have a few reviews today. A little bit later on, we're going to talk some news prior to that and have a little bit of a catch-up. And then in the next week, ideally before the end of the year, we will have the annual Ghoulie Awards for the best and maybe some worst in year. I'm definitely going to have to do some research because there's been a lot of films I've watched this year. I can't remember all of them. I'm going to have to kind of have a little look back at what I have watched and pull together some awards for y'all. And also, we're going to try and do a little bit of a preview for 2025, the films that have been announced to be coming out in the new year, and talk about how hyped I am. If people have any particular films they're hyped about, I mean, the main one that comes to mind, which is technically being released this year, but very late this year, is Robert Eggers' Nosferatu. Very, very hyped for that. So outside of that, like I say, it has been incredibly busy with wedding planning and work and visiting family and visiting friends. It's just been quite full on. But in the interim, I have managed to do little bits of gaming, and we will be doing some game streaming during this festive period. So at the time of recording, Friday, Monday the 23rd, I'm going to aim later on this evening, UK time, to go onto twitch.tv/Tezzius and do some video gaming. And what I'm thinking of streaming is a game that is on sale at the moment, and that is Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2. Now, if I like the look of this, and we've talked before about Warhammer and how I don't really know a lot about it, it's not something I've ever really sort of looked into, and whenever I have sort of had a bit of an interest in what's it all about, there's a hell of a lot of lore. There's just an extensive amount of lore of the various groupings and history and blah, blah, blah. That it's always seemed kind of similar to me for manga, or an anime series, I should maybe specify, where it just seems like there's just, it's such a commitment to try and, get a passing interest in it. But I am going to give it, I figured this game looks pretty cool. I've played the opening level, the opening kind of prologue. It is badass. It is very, very cool. Like, the alien designs are awesome. It looks gnarly. It's definitely got a Gears of War feel, which I'm assuming Gears of War took some inspiration from Warhammer 40k, because I know 40k has been around for longer than Gears of War. Correct me if I'm wrong. But so far, so cool. So going to hopefully do a bit of streaming of that later on, all being that I still know how to set up my streaming setup. I did talk myself out of picking up The Thing. I think I have. So The Thing remaster, HD remaster, came out a few weeks ago. It's available on Xbox, PlayStation 5, probably PC as well. £25, which is very, very reasonable for a newly released game. The only thing is, the reason that I've kind of talked myself out of it is just looking at the videos, looking at the images, it is a HD skin on that game, the original game, which is going to have tank controls, which is going to be janky. The original game is good and fun, and I love the Thing universe. So it's the 1982 film, The Thing. But right now, with Christmas and everything, do I want to be spending? I'd much prefer if I just wait. If it's on sale below £10, below £15, then okay, sure. Because I could get 2 cups of coffee for that. It's 2 Starbucks. or Costa or wherever, or independent stores is probably better to name drop. But 25 quid for a game which, and I think part of it is talking to friends and they were saying, yeah, well, it does just look like it doesn't look like they've remade any of the models or anything. It does basically just look like that old game except with a HD output. And it does make me think of the HD release that I picked up a little while ago of Silent Hill 2 and 3. Mainly for the purpose of playing 3, because I never played it back in the day. And we did stream a bit of 3. And that didn't look HD. Considering it's the HD release on Xbox 360, doesn't look HD at all. It essentially looks like just an export that plays on Xbox 360 of a PS2 game. So I kind of that was the thing that kind of just sat in the back of my brain and made me think, I don't know if I really want to take that gamble, take that jump. So I haven't. So there's hype levels for The Witcher 4 after the Games Awards release trailer of that. I never finished. I love The Witcher 3, but I never finished Blood and Wine, it's called. The second expansion. I played through the base game, loved it. I played through the first expansion, which I didn't realise I was doing. I just thought I was playing through the game. Loved it. And I rarely play DLC. I normally find when I finish the story, it's quite often I just don't bother continuing. But I must have previously had this and had the Game of the Year edition, so I just absolutely loved it. But I think I must have the disc edition because it wasn't in my library. And that was on sale for like £6. Picked that up. Because I wanted to finish. I wanted to jump back into that world. And going back into it, considering it's a game that's quite a few years old, I haven't played it for a number of years. And I usually find if I go back to play something I've played before, like I'm not a repetitive gamer in terms of I rarely revisit games. Outside of like sports games, I rarely find myself going, I'm going to jump back in. I don't replay games very often. I'm very much narrative based. Once I finish the story or the iteration of the story I've got, it's very unlikely for me that I'll jump back into it. It's just the way that I'm wired. But jumping back into that world, Nilfheim, whatever it is, gorgeous. It looks great. It looks really good, and it's got my save in it still, which is even better. So I've been able to jump straight back into that world like I've not even been away. But one thing that I have picked up. So me and a friend Tom, and pal, and also listener of the show, James, shout out to James, we are going to be playing off stream. Off recording, because it has been mentioned, could we stream that? And I think that's going to be too difficult. Maybe something in the future, I don't know. But we are going to get into a bit of tabletop gaming over the festive period. Specifically, after good old social media marketing, knowing that I'm a fan of the Alien series, most likely for recent output of Alien Romulus, highlighted to me that there is a tabletop game, which is kind of partly why mentioning Warhammer earlier on, of Aliens, or Aliens, Another Day in the Court, something like that. And so we were just like, holy shit, that sounds awesome. Let's go for it. He's picked up the base game. I've picked up the Get Away From Her, You Bitch expansion. Predominantly because I wanted the Alien Queen, which, is that going to focus in? Just bring it up to the camera. Apologies, audio listeners. I don't know if the camera is going to autofocus. Maybe not. But we have an Alien Queen here. Very, very cool. Although it feels a bit wobbly. Probably need to do some extra glue on that. So, yeah, I've been slowly building the characters, the creatures and character miniatures for that. And it has made me think, oh, do you know what? Maybe I should have another go at Warhammer. We did a video, which I think is now privated as the old Ministry of Slam Wrestling Arena page is now down. But I won't go into the details, but I've got no involvement in that anymore, and hadn't for a long time anyway. But we did a video a little while ago, which was, for my show, quite successful, painting a miniature. Now, there were comments about, what are you doing? You haven't primed it, you need to do this layer first and that. And, I went in there completely blind. I had no kind of instructions, and I probably should have looked up how to do it. But I basically took like a starter kit and I built and painted a miniature for one of the alien races that they're like yellow and green and stuff. Green, I think, predominantly. Can't remember. But that was a lot of fun. But it's something where I've always been, I grew up putting together airfix. Don't know why. I wasn't ever interested in cars or planes or whatnot, but I really enjoyed that process. And putting these ones together, especially the Queen, because there's quite a few components to it. The other character I've put together was Bishop, which was, I say put together in the loosest possible way, because it is basically just the character and the base. There's not much building there. But I've had fun with it. So, you know what? While I'm off, there's a local shop here that stocks Warhammer. I'll go and have a look-see. You know, what's the worst that can happen? Suddenly find a new expensive hobby that's going to cost a lot of money. Yeah, I mean, quite possibly, but we can't really do that. We've got a wedding, so anyway, I digress. That's kind of what I've been up to, building characters, finally getting into some gaming. Oh, Silent Hill 2. Silent Hill 2 is going well. I'm out of the hospital. I've done both the normal hospital and the Silent Hill, hell version. And I've now got to the labyrinth or prison. I don't know if they're both the same, one or the other, but it's essentially this underground prison under a historical society pet area. Very, very creepy, but that's a lot of fun. So if people haven't played Silent Hill 2 on PlayStation, and is it on Xbox? Not sure. I'd highly recommend it. It's so good, and it's I really have missed that over-the-shoulder bit of puzzles. I've never thought I'd miss puzzles. A bit of puzzles, a bit of hand-to-hand combat, and some guns. It's just creepy. It's really, really, really well made. Anyway, ghouls and fiends. So for today's show, we're going to get into the news in just 1 second, and then the reviews. We've got a bit of a mixed bag of the reviews. Last night I watched a film on Netflix, a new thriller called DarkGame. Awful title. Also recently, me and my fiance watched The Last Breath on Paramount Plus. She loves shark attack films. And at some point last week, I watched on Shudder, the Shudder exclusive, MadS, which is reportedly shot in one take. It looks like that. I don't know if that is actually how it was done. If it was actually how it was done, then that's fucking incredible. Don't know why I tried to censor myself. But it essentially looks as though it's one continuous take. We'll talk about that at the very end of the show. That's going to be our main film. But without further ado, ghouls and fiends, it's now time for the horror news. This is the news. There we go. We're moving on swiftly. We're not dicking around today, that's for sure. So this is the horror news. All our news comes from bloodydisgusting.com. Be sure to check them out. Great articles, editorials, reviews, etc., etc. Really good site. Follow them. This is from Friday, so a few days late for us. Friday, December 20th. 6 new horror movies released at home this week. Write-up is from John Squires. So, first up is the psychological horror movie Listen Carefully from director Ryan Barton Grimley, who did Hawk and Rev Vampire Slayers, never heard of it, which hit VOD outlets this past Monday. In the indie horror film, when troubled assistant bank manager Andy McNeary's baby daughter goes missing, he must follow the instructions of a mysterious voiceover on the other end of a baby monitor to save her before she disappears and his life is ruined forever. Ryan Barton Grimley stars alongside co-star producer Simone Barton Grimley of Elijah's Ashes and co-star producer Ari Schneider of Hawk and Rev Vampire Slayers and Elijah's Ashes. The filmmaking team for Listen Carefully is joined by frequent collaborators Audrey Hayworth, David Rickabow and Sean Ayers. So I am not familiar with anyone involved in this. Yeah, I've not even heard of Elijah's Ashes or Hawk and Rev Vampire Slayers. Don't know if they've had UK releases, if it's flown under the radar, but yeah, psychological horror. I do dig it, but sometimes it just makes me nervous because I just think, and not in a good way of nervous, it just makes me think, nervous in terms of oh, it's going to turn out one of the main characters is actually the killer, and they've got like split personality, or they've got like, you know, possessed or whatever. And it's always, I always feel that when you've got that title or genre, that it's almost like a little caveat for a cop out. And I know some people absolutely love that because they don't see it coming. And I should preface that I don't sit watching films planning, not planning, but dissecting them to go, oh, I wonder, oh, that person's, they're going to come into it. They're clearly this, I'd like to turn my brain off and not think about anything when I'm watching the film. But sometimes you have to call shit when you can smell it and you can see it. If it looks like shit and smells like shit, then it's going to be shit. I'm not saying this is, but when it comes to, oh, there's going to be a twist, if you can see it coming a mile away, then it's like, okay, it's taking me out of it a bit. But who knows? Maybe there is no twist and I'm just crapping over that for no reason. Quite possible. Next up, true crime and the paranormal intertwine in a brand new documentary, The Lady of the Lake, from Uncorked Entertainment and director Ryan Grulich, who worked on Georgie and Foolish Mortals. Journey into the Heart of the Unknown on VOD now. Directed by Ryan Grulich and led by renowned paranormal investigator Amanda D. Paulson, the film delves into the haunted legend of Lake Crescent, located in the Pacific Northwest's enigmatic Port Angeles, WA. At Washington, is that? Don't know. I don't know American states very well. The Lady of the Lake revisits the chilling 1937 murder of Hayley Illingworth, a local waitress whose body, eerily preserved by the lake's frigid waters, resurfaced to reveal a tale wrapped in layers of violence, history, and the supernatural. Paulson's investigation uncovers secrets buried in the depths of Lake Crescent, weaving a narrative that transcends the boundaries of reality. Through compelling interviews with local residents, historians, and paranormal experts captured with eerily beautiful cinematography, The Lady of the Lake brings to life the ethereal beauty and dark allure of Lake Crescent. A meticulous exploration of the liminal spaces where history and mystery converge, the documentary is a cinematic tapestry of truth and illusion that challenges viewers to confront their deepest fears and curiosities. The documentary is produced by Creepy Kingdom Studios in association with award-winning documentarian John Campopiano. Pennywise, the story of it, Unearthed and Untold, The Path to Pet Cemetery, and Bloody Disgusting's own Alex DiVincenzo. I really enjoyed Pennywise, the story of it. I think it was very, very good. I mean, I was very hyped when I heard that it was being made because, we've talked before, Stephen King was my introduction into horror, and initially that was because of the artwork to the VHS copy of the TV miniseries with Tim Curry as Pennywise. So learning about that was really, really something I was looking forward to, especially because you found out from that documentary how much they wanted to do and to honour and to make it scary, but the limits of network television, the issues with the writing for the second part, which has always been downplayed in comparison to the first, and that happened even recently with the 2 chapters, the cinematic version. You could argue it comes down to the source material, that it's just stronger when they're kids, but I also generally think that it almost works better to flip between the two. And that's something they tried to do in part 2 because they realised a lot of the strength is in the kid actors in this and how good of a job they did. But in doing so, you then had this weird de-aging and digitising of the voices because a couple of years has passed, the kids have grown, voices have changed, and that was a bit odd. And there's just a few things in chapter 2 that just didn't work, unfortunately. But it was a really interesting documentary. I'm not familiar with Unearthed and Untold, The Path to Pet Cemetery. I think it might be available on Prime in the UK, but Pet Sematary is an odd one. It's one that a lot of people cite as one of the scariest Stephen King stories. I think even Stephen King himself has said it's his scariest piece. And I guess that's the parenthood element there, which I'm not a parent, so I don't necessarily. I guess it just taps into something. But yeah, I've not then been that interested to look further into the Pet Sematary making of. And I have seen the film, the original film. I've not seen the newer adaptation or its sequel. But yeah, I don't really know a lot about the story of the 1987 murder of Haley Illingworth. Creepy stuff. Do like a good documentary though, so keep an eye out for that one. Next, following the wake of Winnie the Pooh and Mickey Mouse getting their own horror films, boy, are we excited about those. Hans Christian Andersen's The Little Mermaid is the next to get its own R-rated twist. I can't talk. That's nothing new. Lionsgate's horror movie, The Little Mermaid, released on VOD this past Tuesday. The film is rated R for language, violence, and nudity. Lionsgate previews beauty is deceiving and dangerous in this darkly fascinating twist on Hans Christian Andersen's tale. In the fantasy horror movie from director Lee Scott, after archaeologist Dr. Eric Prince and his students uncover an ancient pagan temple in the depths of the Caribbean, Eric falls for a mysterious woman who resembles a mermaid he and his team encountered at sea. As their relationship intensifies, she leads Eric deeper into her evil underwater world until he must choose between true love and the destruction of all humanity. Mike Markoff, Jeff Denton, Samuel Selman, Sean Michael Argo, Winston Crook, Stephen Manuel Laurent, and Lydia Helen star in this unofficial Little Mermaid tale. So the artwork for this does look kind of cool. You've got the classic appearance of the Ariel type. I don't know if she's called that in this. I don't know if there's any copyright there. Sat atop a little kind of rock cliff in the water, so water splashing around her, but it's made up of human skulls. That's pretty cool. I mean, I don't imagine the film's going to be that good, and that's just basing off the fact that it's, you know, taking a children's property from, you know, the Disney Corporation from many years ago, and also from classic literature much earlier than Disney, and doing a horror twist on it. It's nothing that new. We had the Snow White horror film from like 1995, which is pretty good, you know, truth be told. But in terms of the modern approach to let's just bash out properties where the copyright has lapsed or is now public domain, it's cheap. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've not seen the trailer for this one. It could be good. It could be decent. I mean, the Pinocchio one looks kind of creepy. The Pied Piper one looks pretty creepy. And the Peter Pan one looks like it could actually be pretty scary if it's done well. So I'm going to try not to just fall into the trap of just crapping on all of these types of films. Give them a chance. I mean, I eventually gave Blood and Honey, the Winnie the Pooh film, the first one, a chance, and it was terrible. Not watched the sequel. Apparently it's meant to be better. Don't know if I want to give it a chance. Anyway, next up, written and directed by Justin Gelzala, Glue Trap also hits VOD on Tuesday, so that's tomorrow. In the film, also hit VOD on Tuesday, I should say, so that was last Tuesday. Apologies. In the film, KJ and Dan are struggling to communicate. A few years into a strange relationship, the couple takes a weekend trip to a friend's cabin to recapture their romance, only to find a dying but not quite dead mouse stuck to a glue trap. They disagree about how to handle KJ advocating for a swift death, while Dan proposes making the mouse's last moments as pleasant as possible. The couple compromises and moves on, slowly finding their way back to each other in this idyllic setting. Unfortunately, their serenity is broken by the arrival of a small woman who can be charitably described as eccentric. She is their host's younger sister and had no idea anyone was staying at the family cabin. No problem if she crashes, right? As the couple struggles to juggle this interloper on top of their already tense dynamic, KJ and Dan begin to worry this obnoxious third wheel may threaten more than their relationship. I mean, initially that doesn't sound too horror-ish. I'm not, again, familiar with anyone involved in this. Gravitas Ventures do release a fair amount of horror on varying scales. You know, the setup doesn't seem to interest me too much. I haven't heard a lot of buzz about it, so Make of that what you will, but if any of that interests you, that should be available on VOD now. Don't know about the UK, though. Bear that in mind, fans from the UK. Next, it's of course not a new movie, but we figured you'd appreciate a reminder here that Danny Boyle's 28 Days Later was finally brought back to digital outlets this past Wednesday. You can purchase or rent 28 Days Later on digital outlets right now. Over on Amazon Prime Video, for example, you can rent the film for $3.99 or purchase the film for $14.99. Physical media of copies of 28 Days Later have been out of print for some time now, and the 2002 Infection horror movie had also been unavailable to digitally stream in any capacity. Animal rights activists free a group of infected chimpanzees to horrifying results in the speculative sci-fi horror effort from writer Alex Garland and director Danny Boyle. Waking from a coma in a deserted London hospital, bicycle courier Jim takes to the deserted city streets in a state of mystified confusion. Joining forces with another group of survivors following a terrifying encounter in a seemingly abandoned church, Jim soon learns the truth behind the deserted streets and the menacing creatures that lurk in the shadows. Sequel 28 Years Later will be unleashed in theatres on June 20th, 2025 from Sony. Since the 28 Years Later trailer, me and my partner have kind of been saying we'd like to watch the original again, and I do also want to watch 28 Weeks Later. I have only seen that film the once, and I remember just being a bit, just not that impressed. Like, I didn't think it was a bad film, but it's kind of like, I suppose it was when I initially watched Hellraiser 3 after watching Hellraiser 1 and 2. It's just that feeling when it goes from this British style of filmmaking to this American style of filmmaking. And there's nothing saying one's better than the other, but they do have their own different kind of tones and feels. And with Hellraiser 3, it felt like it went from Hellraiser as this British dark twisted horror to Hellraiser Goes Hollywood. And I guess it might have felt a little bit like that when I first, and the only time I saw 28 Weeks Later. I do want to give it another chance, and I know it was on Disney Plus. I don't know if it still is on there. But yeah, would definitely want to watch 28 Days Later again for sure. We're both hyped for watching 28 Years Later later in 2025. And then finally, holiday horror movie The Naughty List of Mr. Scrooge came down the chimney on VOD outlets beginning December 20th from the genre distributor Terra Films. In writer-director Jack Helgren's The Naughty List of Mr. Scrooge, a group of former college friends gather for a reunion and enter a winter chalet 15 years after one of their own dies during the production of A Christmas Carol. The group then finds themselves being stalked and killed off one by someone dressed as a terrifying vision of Ebenezer Scrooge. Sky Coyne, Colin Koth, Kim Whalen, and Liz Fenning star. Helrich said in a statement, "There have been a lot of spins on classic characters bursting through the pipelines as of late, but Scrooge has always been the most undeniably classic holiday villain. So to finally bring the lore of his legacy to life in our fun slasher roller coaster has truly been a Christmas wish come true. Our team put a ton of love into this holiday love letter to all those naughty horror fans out there, and Scrooge is about to bring a ton of slashing to the season of giving." Yeah. It sounds like they're aware that the film they're making is just going, right, let's do a horror version of that. Let's just shit something out and hope it's half decent. Not interested. Let's move on now to some of the little headlines that have come up in the last week. Lee Cronin's The Mummy. Evil Dead Rise director's next horror movie gets official title. Megan Navarro writes, fresh off last year's Evil Dead Rise, it was announced earlier this year that director Lee Cronin will next be directing an untitled horror movie for Blumhouse and James Wan's Atomic Monster. Today, Cronin took to Instagram to reveal that feature is Lee Cronin's The Mummy. This will be unlike any mummy movie you ever laid eyeballs on before. I'm digging deep into the earth to raise something very ancient and very frightening, said writer-director Lee Cronin. Cronin is writing and directing the film, produced by Atomic Monster, Blumhouse and Doppelgangers, for New Line. New Line Cinema will be releasing this one in theatres April 17th, 2026. Collaborating with Jason, James, and the wonderful teams from these two storied and massively successful organisations is what perfect nightmares are made of, said Cronin previously. Getting to return to New Line Cinema and my wonderful partners over there is the cherry on top. Jason Blum said Cronin has an intriguing, modern take on something quite ancient that I think audiences will love, while James Wan called the Evil Dead Rise director a gifted filmmaker in the world of horror whose storytelling has electrified audiences. As previously announced, Atomic Monster and Blumhouse are co-financing the film. James Wan, Jason Blum, and John Kevill are producers on the film. Michael Clear, Judson Scott, and Macdara Killier are executive producers. Alana Glasshall is the executive overseeing the project for Atomic Monster. Okay, I'm pretty hyped for this. I did really enjoy Evil Dead Rise. It doesn't fully smash it out the park, but as a new entry in that franchise, I felt that it built on the previous Evil Dead film, the Fede Alvarez one, which I thought was really great. It's a bit of a swing when you take the comedic elements out, and a lot of the comedy did come from the physical comedy of Bruce Campbell, especially. There isn't so much comedy in the first film, but you get elements of it with the possession occurring for Bruce's character Ash in Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn, and of course Army of Darkness really lent into that comedic style. But the requel, Evil Dead, it really enjoyed that, and Evil Dead Rise, I feel, amped up the horror, the scares quite admirably. And it's something actually that I think this holiday season I want to give it a rewatch. I have got the Blu-ray, just haven't got around to watching it again since I saw it in the cinema, and I did thoroughly enjoy that. And the Mummy franchise is one that I've always wondered why we haven't had a good scary mummy film, like a good horror mummy film, because the Mummy series that came out from Universal, I believe, a couple of decades ago was good, family-friendly action fun, elements of peril, but not terror, and also some really bad CGI in places. Dwayne, we're looking at you. But I've often wondered, like, why is it seemingly difficult to make a scary mummy film, considering it's essentially a zombie, and we've had the fast running zombies that people love. 28 Days Later, of course, as we mentioned, not zombies but rage infected. That kind of element, but obviously the Dawn of the Dead Zack Snyder remake. But I like that. I think there's a place for that, but I do also enjoy that lumbering approach because it's just creepy. You get cornered by that, and something slowly walking towards you, and you find yourself that you're stuck and you can't get away from. I think it's a different level of fear. Not necessarily it's scarier than things running at you full pelt. I guess there's an adrenaline element there, but it's just something that just screams terror. So I really dig that, definitely. So I'm hyped for this. I'm definitely hyped for this. Got a long while to wait, but so unfortunately this won't be in my 2025 preview, alas. But definitely one I'm going to be keeping an eye out for and keeping my ear to the ground for any news on. Next up, we've got some video game news. That's right. Mike Wilson writes up, new Terminator game, Terminator 2D, No Fate, leaked for PC and consoles. After bringing Terminator Resistance to fans back in 2019, Reef Entertainment are set to return with another Terminator game thanks to the Australian classification website. A listing has been discovered for an as-yet unannounced title called Terminator 2D No Fate, which is slated for release on PS5, PS4, Xbox Series, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch and PC. Details on the game are nominal for the moment, seeing as it's unannounced, but it appears that Reef Entertainment will be developing and publishing Terminator 2D No Fate as opposed to having Teon handling publishing duties, which they did for Terminator Resistance. If you haven't played Terminator Resistance, which is available on Steam, PS5, PS4, Xbox One, Xbox Series, the game features an original story based on the Terminator and Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Taking place in a post-apocalyptic Los Angeles nearly 30 years after Judgment Day, Resistance expands upon the future war glimpsed at in the films and introduces a new hero, Jacob Rivers, a soldier in the Resistance Pacific Division. The game is followed by the Annihilation Line DLC, which saw Jacob Rivers assisting Kyle Reese in the investigation of an outpost that had mysteriously gone silent. I only very briefly played a bit of Resistance. I heard it was very good, but I only ever played a little bit of it, and I remember just sort of thinking, this definitely feels like a last-gen game that has maybe been made available for current gen. It just had that older style of FPS gameplay, which I guess was just a little jarring for me. I think over time my appreciation for going back to older games has certainly got greater. And I should also mention, in terms of game streams, whether we do actually do this tonight instead of Space Marines, but I have finally got an adapter that works for my Nintendo 64. So I have been playing a bit of Ocarina of Time and doing badly at it. Bit of Ocarina of Time, and also WWF No Mercy. So we may well, in this next week, do a WWF No Mercy stream. Just attempt, one of the championship challenges, story mode type thing. Why not? We've talked about it for a long time. I think my next step is to get an adapter for the PS2 I've got, because I really want to jump into some games on that. Like, I enjoyed the N64. It was my first kind of next gen at the time console. First consoles were a Mega Drive and a Nintendo Game Boy. So I love the N64, but the PS2, man, that I played so many goddamn games on that console. And I currently have just got a Turok game and GTA Vice City. But I'm thinking I'm going to keep an eye out on some job lots, where you can get like bundles of games dirt cheap. And hopefully there's some gold in there. But yeah, we are going to do, finally, I've talked about it for a long time, we are going to do some retro streams. But if you're fans of the franchise, I mean, Terminator 2D, so I'm thinking it's going to be a side-scroller. Because why else would you have 2D in the title? Unless there's something else I'm missing there. It feels... And not just because it's being released onto Switch as well, but Switch can do a lot of great things, but it does feel that maybe that's where they're going, and not necessarily a bad thing. I would say in terms of side-scrollers, I haven't heard anything positive about the Evil Dead or the Halloween side-scroller game. They got announced and very quickly released and just straight under the radar, which makes me think maybe not so good. Maybe not so good. And then finally on the news, it's an interesting actor. Jared Leto playing Skeletor in live-action Masters of the Universe movie. Write-up is from Megan Navarro. A live-action Masters of the Universe movie is in the works at Amazon MGM Studios and Mattel Films, and Deadline reports that the project has found its Skeletor in Jared Leto, along with a few of Skeletor's henchmen. Masters of the Universe is now being set for a theatrical release on June 5th, 2026, with Travis Knight on board to direct He-Man's return to the big screen. Joining Leto as Skeletor are Sam C. Wilson, who is in House of the Dragon, I don't know the name, playing Trapjaw, Hathor Bjornsson, who, pretty sure that is the mountain, as Goatman, and Kojo Atta as Triclops. Rounding out the villains is Evil Lyn, Skeletor's second-in-command, to be played by Alison Brie. Okay, that's pretty cool. We love Alison Brie. Deadline reminds of the henchman's skill set. Trapjaw is a recurring villain in the franchise, known for his cybernetic enhancements and versatile weaponry. Goatman is a minor villain, known for his goat-like appearance and association with Skeletor's forces, while Triclops is one of Skeletor's most resourceful and tech-savvy henchmen, a skilled swordsman who is a master of surveillance and technology. Opposing the villains are Nicholas Galitznine's He-Man and Camila Mendez's of Riverdale's Teela. Also set to star is Idris Elba, who plays Duncan, Man-at-Arms. Adam and Aaron Nee wrote the original version of the script with David Callahan, which Chris Butler will rewrite. Let's just have a quick look at who some of these people are. Okay, well, Nicholas Galitzine looks pretty weedy, and that's who is He-Man. Okay. Exact plot details being kept under wraps, but safe to assume that it'll centre on the ongoing battle between the heroic He-Man, the universe's most powerful man, and the evil Skeletor. The movie will be based on the beloved Mattel toy line, which spawned a successful animated series from 83 to 85, as well as the 1987 live-action film starring Dolph Lundgren as He-Man. The property centres on the warrior He-Man, the last hope of a magical land called Eternia. Jared Leto most recently transformed fully as the Hatbox Ghost in the most recent live-action adaptation of Disney's Haunted Mansion, so this role feels like a natural progression. Okay, can this be good? Maybe. Maybe. There's been that recent Kevin Smith TV animated series on Netflix, and I did watch the first season of that. I thought it was decent, but it felt like things were kind of sort of being dragged out and delayed, and in terms of the story development. And it was weird because it was Master of the Universe is essentially a He-Man series, but He-Man barely featured in it, which did just feel a little bit like it's that. Doesn't necessarily make sense, but you could argue, well, it's not called He-Man, it's called Master of the Universe. But do you know what I mean? It's like one of those things where it's like, if you're doing a spin-off, do a spin-off, but if you're doing Master of the Universe, you think He-Man v Skeletor, and it wasn't really that. I'm not sure about the latest season or seasons. I only saw the first one, but that was decent. It was decent enough. I enjoyed it for the most part, and I think Mark Hamill played Skeletor in that. You know, you've got money when you've got Mark Hamill on board. Simple as. Anyway, Ghouls and Fiends, that is it for the horror news. Jingle time. That was the news. Oh.
You hang up on me again, I'll cut you like a fish, understand?
There we go. Now it's time for some horror reviews. First up in the reviews, recent release on Netflix. I don't know if it's a Netflix original or just a release onto the service. Is 2024's DarkGame, starring Ed Westwick, who I did have to look up. What do I know him from? It's a TV series called White Gold, and I think he's done a few film roles, but that's where I associated him from. So, DarkGame, 2024 thriller, directed by Howard J. Ford, written by Tom George, Gary Grant, and Niall Johnson, starring Ed Westwick, Andrew P. Stephen, and Natalia Svetkova. A determined detective is in a race against time to stop a twisted game show on the dark web, where captives are forced to compete for their lives. So, as usual, we will talk about a little bit about the plot. There isn't a Wikipedia page, so I'm going to have to go off memory. We're going to talk about the highs and the lows, and then give you a score out of 10. So, essentially, DarkGame, it's a shite title for a film, but DarkGame is a game that is being played on the dark web. It's a live stream where captives are forced to play games such as like Russian roulette and dodgeball, but the balls are bound with barbed wire, to then kind of give us a loser of that game. The loser of that game then goes to the results show, and whoever has been watching the stream and done the largest bid, they then get to pick how that person dies. And there's 3 options. Sometimes it varies from stream to stream, but there's 3 options. The first one being either lethal injection, baseball bat, or a chainsaw. We've then got Ed Westwick's character, what's his name? Ben, Detective Ben, who is investigating. He's a really troubled detective investigating this case when it comes to hit the police's attention that people are being snatched off the streets in, I think it's Portland, Oregon, and then taken to this area where various people are being held and then forced to do these games. And you've then got a very enigmatic presenter who's got like a I think Eyes Wide Shut, but I can't think of the technical term. Like it's like an aristocratic masquerade mask, who is hosting these shows and so on and so forth. And then we recently find that Katya, a woman who is at the very start of the film we're introduced to, she has now been kidnapped and taken to this location to perform in these games against their will. Assisting the presenter are a number of masked individuals who have guns and cattle prods to ensure that people play the game. Okay, so what drew me initially to this? The trailer did look kind of decent, and the fact that this is a new thriller, and it looked like, not necessarily it looked like the quality of the 90s and early 2000s thrillers, but that is a period of cinema that I really enjoyed. Like, I love my horrors, of course, this is a horror show, Well, I think that, if you get a really good thriller where it's a bit of a cat and mouse game, you've got a serial killer out there, you've got a policeman, detective, policewoman, FBI investigating the case. I like that. Twists and turns, thrilling finale. It's great. It's a simple formula, but it works. I love a good thriller novel. I've recently read the first book in the Bone Collector series, or Lincoln Rhymes series, The Bone Collector. But I've also been reading a lot of Chris Carter's books. I can't remember who the detective is in that. But they're pretty good. They're pretty good. They're simple, 300-400 page novels, decent twists and turns, some good kills in it, some good tension, usually a pretty good finale and revelation of what's going on. They are essentially the book version of those 90s sort of thriller films. So I hoped that maybe this was going to go down that route, and I will commend it for having that kind of structure. It certainly doesn't feel like those films in terms of cinematography. Like, I suppose kind of like modern comedy films, there just doesn't seem to be the same studio interest to budget and market well thriller films. Like, there aren't comedies really anymore. There are comedy films being released, but just not the same way, not studio comedies. It seems to be more streaming is the route that studios want to go. I don't necessarily know when that change happened. I don't know if it was, there's always been this discussion that big studios just want to do sequels and franchises and remakes, sequels to franchises and remakes. And that's been the case for a long, long time. That's always been there. But you've also had, original films coming out. It does really feel like, from a studio perspective, like cinema release perspective, it's predominantly franchises. And I think that is a shame. Comedy films, of course, I do. I miss going to watch a good comedy in the cinema. But also thrillers. We just don't really get big thrillers coming to the cinema these days, and it sucks. I'd like to see more of that. So it does go for that tone and that structure. I will give it that. The acting is a bit mishmash. Like, Ed Westwick is trying to play this hard nut, really troubled cop who just, but there's not really much depth given there. They talk about, we know what happened with him before, but you don't really find out what happened before, the troubled trope. They also do this storyline of having to involve the help of a prisoner that he put away, who is a tech cyber criminal, made to look quite creepy. Performances are okay, but then we don't really find out, okay, what exactly did he do? And does anything happen from that? No, he helps them for a day, and then that's kind of it. Just some weird missed opportunities there. Leading to the finale. The finale actually was all right, and I think the performance of the presenter of the live stream was decent. A bit hammy, but it was decent. He was doing the best that he could with the material he had. But it was entertaining enough. I liked the pacing of the film. The quality of it just wasn't quite up there. I can't knock it too much, but it wasn't brilliant. It wasn't brilliant. I'm going to give DarkGame 5 out of 10. It's on Netflix. Give it a watch if you just want to watch a thriller for an hour and a half. But yeah, there's things that work in its favor, and there's things that just don't really go in its favor at all. Next up, The Last Breath. Watch this one on Paramount Plus. Last Breath, 2024 horror thriller, directed by Joachim Hayden, written by Andrew Pendergast and Nick Saltris, starring Kim Spearman, Jack Parr, Alexander Arnold, and also the final, I believe, on-screen appearance of Julian Sands, and this was released, I think, a year after his passing. So again, no Wikipedia page, I'll just read the blurb and then I'll talk about it from memory. A group of old college friends reunite on a Caribbean scuba diving trip, exploring the wreckage of a World War II battleship, and find themselves trapped inside the underwater labyrinth of rusted metal, surrounded by great white sharks. So this film looks pretty decent, I would say. The only unfortunate thing is it looks decent, except for the sharks. The sharks do have It's weird because normally if you think that there's budget issues with the films, it generally kind of feels from the start that that's the case. But we get a lot of underwater scenes, we get a lot of scuba action, going around this great set that they've got for this underwater World War II battleship. All of that is pretty decent. It's a typical setup of a guy who's kind of living a nomadic life with a mate of his, have this boat, and they come across this wreckage, which they think this could finally change things, get us some money, and unfortunately they really do need the money for a lot of mounting bills. The main character, what's he called? The main character, Noah, has some friends visit, and of course one of them's a dickhead, but he's also got a lot of money. It's that typical scenario. So they go to this wreckage, even though it really should be declared and safety protocols set up in place. So, no one knows they're there, that sort of setup. And then, as you can expect, things don't really go to plan. The acting, I think, is generally decent in this. I would say, though, Jack Parr as Noah, who is the lead in this film, and I think also Kim Spearman as Sam, who's kind of the love interest. It is unfortunate that they are probably the weakest actors in the bunch, I would say. I think everyone else does their roles pretty well. Julian Sands is quite a classic actor. He is pretty good in this. Some of the moments are quite... There's a sacrifice moment, which it is quite cheesy, and it isn't helped by the fact that the sharks themselves are kind of a low point in their CGI-ness. Of course, you're going to have CGI sharks, but it does look like it does look like shit CGI. I would say that. Some of the kills are fairly decent. There's some gore moments that are actually quite good. Music is fine. It's nothing to write home about. But a lot of these kind of smaller budget films don't often have memorable scores. It is what it is. I think it's unfortunate. Score does play a big part in film tension. But yeah, it's an odd one. I mean, in terms of low budget shark attack films, it's probably one of the better ones from recent years. And it has a decent enough finale, I suppose. There isn't anything kind of majorly bad about the film. It is literally the leads aren't that good, and the CGI for the sharks are kind of crap. But the shark attacks themselves, I would say, are kind of decent. So this one gets a whopping 5.5 out of 10 on my score. I think it is a little bit better than DarkGame. I mean, DarkGame, again, I like what they're going for in these films. They don't necessarily nail it. There are probably budgetary limitations, for sure, in The Last Breath. But they do some great set pieces, and there are some great moments of tension. In terms of a lot of these underwater kind of battles. I enjoyed that. I'm going to give it 5.5 out of 10. And then finally, The Rock. Finally, from Shudder. 2024, MadS, spelt capital M-A-D, capital S. Written and directed by David Moreau, starring Lucille Guillaume, Laurie Pavey, and Milton Rishi. A teenager who stops off to see his dealer to test a new drug before heading off for a night of partying. On the way home, he picks up an injured woman, and the night takes a surreal turn. Okay, so this is the film that is reportedly shot across one continuous take. And it does say it was filmed in one long tracking shot with no breaks. And if that is genuinely true, then that is fucking incredible. Like, bravo to everyone involved if that is the case. And even if it isn't, to make it look like that is quite an achievement. Sometimes when there's particular moments in films that look to be one continuous shot, you can, if you're paying attention, you can normally note the moments where someone's back crosses in front of the frame, and that could be a cutting moment to another take, things like that. If this is done in one continuous shot, brilliant. So there is a bit further on the storyline, so I'll read further onto this before I start talking about this On a quiet August evening, moneyed teenager Roman stops by his dealer's house before heading out for a night of hard partying. Instead, he runs into a mysterious woman trying to make a getaway. And just like that, things went sideways. As the powerful substance in his system kicks in, Romain struggles to process what is happening, only to descend deeper into a chaotic haze. But what was in that pill? Is Romain having a bad trip, or are his vivid hallucinations signaling something more ominous? Either way, one thing is clear. This horrifying experience is just the beginning of a long, brutal night filled with blood and terror. Okie dokie. So, when he picks up this woman on the road, and she's got loads of bandages on her, she's terrified, she's not making a lot of sense. She starts spewing up blood, and a lot gets on him, gets in his face. And he is then all panicked. He thinks he has this dead girl in his car in his house. His dad, who's away, is phoning him, asking what's going on. Goes to this party, and his behaviour starts changing. Like, he's got these kind of tics, head twitching. And when he's walking around in the dark, his eyes are kind of luminous. Like, they're like kind of got this yellow tinge to them, which is really quite cool and, quite creepy. And there are these people who are pursuing the woman who had escaped, who's now kind of running around on all fours, and then in turn pursuing him and pursuing anyone that's come into contact. So it does this great approach to kind of showing an outbreak, but from multiple, as we go on, multiple characters' perspectives. So it's not a case of we're getting news reports or people are having dialogue to go, well, this is what's happening, this is what's occurring. But you're kind of seeing and getting the story that something really bad has happened, and they are trying to, whatever this organization are, whether it's police, whether it's a government organization, are trying to contain it by any means necessary. And it does essentially follow 3 characters at various points. Without giving too much away, you are following Roman, whatever his name is pronounced as initially. And as his story progresses, we're then going on to other characters, his partner, and also another woman who he has had a liaison with. And it's not like there's uber gore in this film. There are moments a bit later on when one of the characters is fully under this influence, whether it's an infestation, an infection, where they basically become like almost flesh-eating zombies. There's this rage element there. And there's a bit of there's this pursuit through a apartment block near the finale, where one of the characters is being chased by someone who's fully under, who's then screaming after them saying, "Hey, hold up, why are you running away? I only want to eat your face." And it's just like, oh my god, this is horrible. And then later on you do see them eating someone's face. I mean, this is really, really well done. It's that perfect kind of area of 1 hour 20, 1 hour 30 for this sort of film, where you are following behind a character and following their journey. The story unfolds at a really nice pace. The performances are great. The music in this is really good, and it is genuinely quite creepy in places. And you do wonder, okay, well, what's actually going to happen here? And we're kind of left thinking, is this whole town fucked? Quite possibly. It took me a little while to watch this, a couple of weeks, purely because it's I believe it's a French language film, and I need to be in the zone, focused to watch it, read the subtitles, and not being interrupted every so often. But I'm glad I did. I had a really good time with this. I'm going to give it 7.5 out of 10 for MadS. Be sure to check that out on Shudder if you have the subscription, or if not, there are free trials for a week. Anyway, Ghouls and Fiends, thank you very much for watching this latest edition of the Ministry of Horror. We will be back for the next show to do the 2024 Ghoulie Awards, and also do a little bit of a preview for 2025. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, Ministry of Horror. Again, not sure what's going on there, but things aren't going, essentially. Don't know why. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, I've seen the Wrapped numbers for the years. Very, very cool. Thank you to everyone across the world. We've got quite a listening base in China as well, which is really cool to see. Thank you for everyone for listening and watching. Share the show, like it, get the name out there. It really does help. Social media, we have an X account, Ministry_Horror, also on TikTok, Ministry of Horror. Be sure to check those out. Give us a like, subscribe, follow, and all of that stuff. And if I don't speak to you before on places like Discord or the socials, be sure to have a great Christmas or whatever you celebrate over this sort of period. And I will catch you later. And also just keep an eye out on twitch.tv/Tezzius, Tezzius. We will get some gaming in. And at some point, I will do another live show with a film watch party. We will do that. Anyway, I'll catch you later. Goodbye.